Hello and welcome to Real Hi-Fi Help. I thought about giving my impressions of this review of this headphone, the Meze Empyrean review. So let's do this. This is kind of interesting. Just want to tell you that this is from New Record Day. He has a pretty decent audiophile channel that reviews gear, and these are kind of my impressions. These are the things that I would recommend this guy using to solve the problems that he had. But I find it very relevant what he says. And yeah, let's just try and get into it. Yeah, I've got some kind of cooling problem on my computer, so that's why the sensor alarms are coming up, just so you guys know. Yeah, all the drama. They are some pretty good headphones, so you gotta.
Hey Siri, what is the definition of Empyrean?
As an adjective, it means belonging to or deriving from heaven. Do you want to hear the remaining one?
Yes.
As a noun, it means heaven, in particular the highest part of heaven.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. It's been a while since I've done any kind of headphone reviews, and when I heard about the Empyreans and I saw the asking price of $3,000, I was just sitting there thinking, like, that's where we're at now? We're at $3,000? Like, that's okay. All right. At the same time, once I started seeing the usual suspects of reviewers getting their grubby hands on these headphones, what was interesting is it seemed to me that they were all singing the same tune, which doesn't always happen, and that same tune might be something along the lines of, these might be the best headphones on the planet.
I agree, they are some of the best headphones.
These might be one of the best headphones on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
So on and so forth. And so I thought, okay, either they're all wrong and this is a big giant conspiracy, or these are just really awesome headphones and
really
I gotta
good.
check these things out.
Yeah.
So I threw my name into the hat, and lucky for me, Meze decided, sure, no problem. We'll send them your way, Ron. And so that's where we are at.
I just want to say that the headphone amp that he's got it connected to does not do this headphone any justice. So I kind of find this a normal trend where people use a subpar headphone amplifier. It might be cool and big and cost a lot, but I know this headphone amplifier, and that is not quite good enough to reflect on what this headphone does. But it is better than most headphone amplifiers that most reviewers use. So yeah.
Now, full integrity disclaimer here. I have no horse in this race at all. I'm not being paid to say anything that I have to say about the Empyreans.
Yeah, you have to mention that.
And even more than that, I've been impressed with what seems to be a very confident Meze in saying, do whatever. We know what we have on our hands,
Yeah,
and just
BS.
please leave a link in the description box, which
All
I'm
the
happy
drama.
to do. That gives me the freedom to, well, do what I want. And so
Yeah, right.
that's what I'm
wanna say,
going to do.
that's a lie.
I feel like I must
Reviewers
confess
don't really
that
get to say
there
what
are
they
many
want.
headphones that are going to be in
They
the
have to say these
category,
things.
if
have
you
to make
will,
it
of the
seem
Empyreans
as
that
if it's coming
I've never
from them.
heard,
But trust
and
me, if they
I
didn't
don't have a
give
clue
positive
as
reviews,
to what their
they wouldn't
actual
get shipped all
competition
this
is
equipment. That's how
out
it
there.
works. So, all
So I
this
want to disarm
Americanism,
this conversation first by being humble and saying,
shizzle,
these
shizzle.
are big boy headphones,
Just ignore that,
and
you know, that's just
it's been a
Americans
while
being
since I've been in the headphone game. I climbed up the ladder to things like Sennheiser HD800s, Hi-Fi Man Edition X's,
that's how the game
a
works.
whole range
That's how
of
it
different
is, but don't
Odyssey
believe what he
headphones.
says.
And so those headphones I am familiar with, but I just want to let you know. Of the headphone manufacturers, there are two that I want to pull out of my bag of tricks and I want to highlight when I start talking about the Empyreans. And the two that I want to highlight is we have Odyssey. I've heard the LCD2s and I've heard the LCD-Xs. And then we have Sennheiser. And I've heard way back the HD580s, the 600s, the 650s, and then later on the HD800s, which I'm going to be using for this example. With Odyssey over here, I would say that a blanket statement would be Odyssey seems to produce these headphones that have this flavor that could be characterized as warmth, comforting, inviting.
I would also say shut in. They have a very shut in soundstage. Of course, the more you pay, the bigger the soundstage gets. But he is right. You know, Odyssey and Sennheiser are like two opposites of the coin. But you just have to realize that has a lot to do with your head amp. If it's tube head amp, the tubes that are in it can actually make it a lot more clearer, a lot bigger soundstage. And an important thing that a lot of people forget is the cable that comes with Odyssey headphones. Odyssey headphones have cables that are really, really limiting. The same with Sennheiser headphones that he's about to talk about.
You have this intoxicating velvety mid-range.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of
that I think is
type of sound.
Pretty fair to say about Odyssey. And then we have
Totally agree. Just want to say, I mentioned Audio Note. If you ever want to mix good sound with each other, try and go with Audio Note gear and Odyssey headphones. They're very compatible. They click very much, and it's just if ever you wanted to pursue that path of top headphone sound, Odyssey and Audio Note very compatible.
Germany over here, which campfires, no, it's too cold over in Germany for campfires. So with the HD800s, specifically the HD800s, we have analytical, incredibly detailed. It's all about resolution. And
no, I wouldn't say that. It's hugely about resolution, and it's also about soundstage, having a big soundstage, and most importantly about the structure of the sound, separating every single detail and the structure of the sound. So resolution is not a good enough way to describe Sennheiser at their top levels. It's just generally very cold and unpersonal and lacking a lot of human substance. And it can be tamed if you have a good cable, if you have a good match of equipment. If you, for example, have one of those really good streamers that I suggested building on my channel, then you can control it and somehow manipulate that sound in a good way. So don't believe that you're locked into that sound. You are mostly locked into that sound if you use the stock cables, if you use normal head amp amplifiers, if you use normal cables, normal ways of making the sound flow. If you use a normal streamer, a Blue Sound streamer, if you use Spotify or something like that, then he is right. That is the world that he is describing. But realize that you can control the sound. My PC is going nuts here with the sensor alarm. You can manipulate the sound in a good way. And that's why I'm doing this video, to let you guys know that you can deal with that problem. And just going into the Sennheiser quickly. What I did with my Sennheiser, I got a Super DuPont mod, which is basically a guy on a forum that I sent, I think, $20 to, and then he shipped me like a plastic thingy that I put inside the cup of the Sennheiser HD800 Mark One. That's the one that had I think the 6 kilohertz problem, and it solved a huge part of the problem. Not all, but a huge part of it. So that can in itself solve that problem for most people, so they don't have to buy the HD800S, which is like HD800 Mark II, just to confuse you guys even more. But we basically have three models: HD800 Mark I, that's the original one with the big soundstage, and that is the most analytical one. It's the most airy one. Then you have the Mark II one, which is HD800S. This has a sort of a compensating sort of sound. I don't like it. I think it's compensating in a way that isn't intelligent enough, but it kind of still is a very cool headphone. It has a lot more bass, but just realize that it isn't necessarily that type of bass that you want as a user. But trust me, you can still, these HD800 Sennheiser headphones, you can manipulate the sound in a good way so it will suit your preference. They are a bit tough to deal with, but still very neutral in order for you to do that. So that's one of the main reasons why I made this video. Yeah. Just going on, there's the latest version, the HD820S, which is a closed design. It's a lot more boosted in design. It has a lot more smack and punch. It's like a combination of the first and the second one that they made, plus a tiny bit extra. So yeah, it has a different sound. I personally don't like it. I think it's a bit weird and unnatural in sound, but I recognize that it is a high quality piece of headphone. Yeah, you can make it work so it sounds really cool and really good, but just don't think that you're getting a headphone and it will do all of the work for you. You have to still work with it quite a lot.
So Meze with the Empyreans take a look at both of these paintings and they say, well, that's really pretty, and that's really pretty. And then they start painting their own painting, and they're jacking brushes from both sides, and they're jacking colors from both sides.
Yeah.
And what you end up with, I feel, is a headphone that I think clearly demonstrates the best of both. And the reason that I'm saying it like this, and the reason why I am going very broad and big in this review instead of picking apart very specific things, which we're going to talk about a couple of things in a minute, but thinking about somebody that would really be interested in honestly pursuing the Empyreans, I would think they would want to know this. I would think that they would want to know if just by chance they are familiar with Odyssey, and just by chance they are familiar with Sennheiser, and they might agree with me on what it is that I just had to say.
Yeah,
I think they're going to appreciate that the Empyreans are somewhere in between those two examples. Now, there's a couple of other things that we should discuss. They're insanely comfortable. I think that you would want to know, hey, did this guy that's rambling about these headphones, did he wear them for the long haul? And the answer is yes.
I also wanted to include these headphones on my top 10 list, but you know, there's only so many headphones you can put on a list, and I just thought the others were worth considering a bit more. But yeah, I kind of wanted to put this on the top 10 list. I don't really know where I would put it. I wouldn't put it as one of the top 5 headphones, but I really wanted to put it on that top 10 list. But there just were a lot of other really good headphones, and yeah, they do offer a lot of good value, and they have that rare quality of sitting more on your head than on your ears. I think the Sennheiser still does that a bit more. The HD 800s. That's one of the few really good things I like about the 800 series from Sennheiser. It's on your head instead of touching any of the ears, because you have these acupuncture points, and when you have stuff, going on your ear or at the bottom of your ear, at the sides, or squeezing your ear, that's not comfortable. You can't listen to music for several hours with that on. And these Meze Empyrean headphones, they were one of the bigger headphones, and I really like that. And the thing I really didn't like about the Odyssey headphones were just that it was like a vice that you had on your head. They were heavy, they were pulling on your neck. The sound was really good and awesome, but they just felt like they were squeezing your head, especially your acupuncture points and your ears. I don't feel that enough headphones make room for the ears. I just don't get why people have to have headphones that touch the ears. I'd rather just have them completely not touch the ears. Stay on the head and don't put pressure on any acupuncture points, and don't pull on the head or the neck or anything. I know it's difficult to make, but when you do that, you also have units that are usually bigger that help a lot with the sound. So yeah, just a very small thing that actually has a huge influence on you and your appreciation of the headphone. So
I took it to the extremes. I brought them to work with me where I can wear headphones all day long and not be bothered, which is fantastic. And there were days where I listened to the Empyreans all day. So
see this
7 hours,
video
6 hours, honestly, headphones, nonstop. The Empyreans are like two little bunny rabbits that are gently pressed up against your ears, and when you start playing music, you have a choir of angels singing. So that's not a bad thing. And honestly,
yeah,
I was shocked at how comfortable that they are. And when you look at them, they're big freaking headphones. You look like a dork, but who cares? I mean, I had a lot of people walking up to me going, what is happening here, Ron? But as soon as I put it on their heads, well, they stopped talking and their jaw dropped and they were like, oh, okay. Here you go, good sir. Thank you for changing my entire life and breaking my brain. And that was something that happened over and over and over again, and it was a lot of fun to watch. The bottom line is this. The Empyreans are insanely comfortable. I don't know how much money was honestly invested in making these things, but the end result is a work of art. The Empyreans come with two cables. They're long cables. You have single-ended and you have balanced.
They are pretty good contender to Focal's Utopia. I would say pretty similar in sound.
Both cables seem fine. They sounded great. I had no issues, no shorts, no problems. I like the way that they connect to the actual headphone. Everything about the package that you get, it oozes confidence. I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, this is metal. I mean, this is not plastic. This is not cheap.
That is cool, but still, you're gonna use
I
them
don't want
at
to
home,
focus
so
too much on a case, for crying out loud.
I'd rather
But
save money on that case.
these guys are not messing around. You get the whole package. Different pads, which do sound different.
I
And
just want to say that producing a case like that's probably going to cost as much as most people use on their headphones. So it wouldn't surprise me if you started a company and you had to produce a case like that to start with, that would probably cost like $500 making cases like that until you got a proper production, and then you can probably get produce those for only like maybe $100 when you're producing them in high quantities. But yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it costs a lot to make these metal cases, a lot.
and they're easy to pop off and put on, and off you go. It takes 2 seconds. There's no fighting it. Everything about the way that these headphones was engineered, there is no kink in their armor when it comes to this that I can find. So, is there a kink in their armor? I'm glad you asked. The only thing that struck me as, I don't know about this, is mid-bass. Lower mid-range into mid-bass with the Empyreans. If there is a kink in their armor, it might be this. I regret even bringing it up because even though I would make the declaration that this very well might be the kink in the armor, I would also say that it still sounds beautiful. So it's kind of a strange thing to try to navigate. But I can, and I'm going to. I think that the mid-bass and the lower mid-range on the Empyreans, I feel like it's got just a little bit too much campfire going on. And when that happens in a headphone, and I've heard it with some of the Odysseys, is it's not as clear and concise as it should be or can be when you have a lot of stuff going on all at the same time. And this is what leads to, I guess you could say, smearing, or I guess you could say muddiness. It's the only thing in these headphones that I noticed where I just wasn't in love with it. And I would take it a step further by saying, unlike all of the other frequencies in these headphones, for me the mid-bass seemed to be glued together the tightest. It just wasn't letting go. And
I kind of agree with the last part. And that's also the thing that separates this headphone from the Abyss headphone, which is like one of the best ever headphones. Probably I can't remember what I put it as number 2 or 3 or whatever. But I also think that separation, that is one of the reasons why the Abyss is a lot better than this headphone. Those are some interesting views that he had, and I have to say that he is kind of right, but it's a bit more complex than that. This thing that he has at the background, that actually is a bit of a problem. I've tried this amp, and it doesn't dig fully into the sound. You also have to realize that in the cable world, when you have a 3-meter cable from a headphone to a head amp, that in itself gives you a tiny bit of distortion, lack of focus, lack of attack, tiny bit of smearing. Yes, it might add a tiny bit of comfortableness and rich, settled type of sound. And we all kind of like that, but that coupled, attacked, instant, focused sound kind of gets lost when you have a 3-meter cable on a headphone. So ideally, if you find this headphone a bit too mellow, tiny bit sluggish, and then that it isn't releasing the instruments, you can actually go for the same length cable, just in a higher quality, just like I wrote here. Okay, you can do that, and it will solve a huge part of the problem. It will also solve a huge part of the problem if he upgraded this, and if he did what I said, if he took a 100 centimeter power cable instead of the standard 200 centimeter version, 2-meter version that most people use. It will give you a more coupled, instant and focused type of sound, and it might do what he said, release the instruments a bit, but I'm not really entirely sure of that. I haven't done this to know this, but these are like my general considerations with a lot of headphones. this will truly change a hell of a lot with the sound. This is not just this headphone. This is sound in general. 3 meters cable gives you that overly smooth, settled sound, but it takes away a bit of that focus and an attack and coupling effect. That could be what he's into. We also don't know behind this thing what is his source. Did he just use a phone before? I think I saw him. I think he used a phone before as source, and that's total fail. When you use a phone, it obviously lacks a lot of power and it doesn't release the instruments clearly. But a lot of that timing and attack and that calmness and digging deep into the sound, you don't get that with the phone. So you need a good source behind this head amp. The head amp won't do all of the job. It will do a big part of the job, but every single part of the chain has to be able to get up to this standard. And if you're using a phone, I don't care if it's the newest Samsung or iPhone, it will not get anywhere near the full potential of this headphone. So I kind of agree with what he said, and that's one of the reasons why it doesn't beat the Abyss. The Abyss headphone, also costing a lot more, clearly beats this headphone. But the points that he said are relevant, and if you want to solve those problems, do what I suggested here. Okay. Yeah.
And we're talking about the separation of instruments and the separation of that particular band. It seemed to me like things were just kind of stuck together, whereas the rest of the band, even bass, deep bass, I didn't get that. Deep bass on the Empyreans, as Metal said in his review, I'll leave the links down below. By the way, Metal, good job on your review. The answer is yes. Yeah. When it comes to bass with the Empyreans, it's one of these situations where you look down and you're like, you want to go down that low? And the Empyreans say, oh, no, we're going to go a lot lower than that. And they do. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm scared. And they do that. And it is...
Okay, I just want to say, they're not that good that they scare you. The Abyss headphones, they scare you. And that's also reflected by the price. The Abyss is more intense and deeper and more 3D. But yeah, I kind of get what he says. But trust me, this headphone doesn't really scare you. Even when you max it out, it's still a tiny bit laid back and fluffy and smeared. But yeah, I mean, for the price, fantastic. I mean, it comes very close to a Focal Utopia. I still would say the Focal Utopia are perhaps a tiny bit better, but that's probably a personal preference thing, and especially the combination of equipment that you use together with these two different headphones, the cables, the equipment, all of that. How much burn-in time have you had? It plays a huge factor. So I still would say the Utopia is a tiny bit better than this headphone, but still this headphone is really good.
It's intoxicating to listen to that. It is a blast. Could they hit a little bit harder? Could there be a little bit more? Maybe.
That was also my consideration when I tried the Utopia with regular gear and regular conditions. That thing about hitting hard and still not being harsh, it has more to do with the setup here, the headphone amp and the source and the proper cables. You can't expect that when you have a 3-meter cable on a headphone and it's not particularly good quality. The plugs are like Chinese standard stuff. I mean, you just don't get that attack usually with a headphone cable that's 3 meters long, unless you have something really aggressive like Furutech Audion plugs and some silver cables, and then you have like a CD player that's perhaps a bit analytical, then it might hit hard, but then you lose some of the the natural fluffiness and the pleasantry of the sound. So yeah, it's kind of a compromise where you have to find the balance for you. But I'm just saying that you can shape that reality if you want to go that way, and these are this is the information that you guys need in order to do that.
Maybe. So I've heard this mentioned in a couple of other reviews, and I think that I would agree. They're not gonna have crazy slam.
But also, I just want to say, when you have a streamer as a source and you completely control the clock, and you've got these short cables that you make yourself, double pull on the minus pole, stuff like that, then all of what he says, it basically doesn't exist as a problem. Because if he had that streamer, the one that I keep raving about on my channel, if he had that streamer behind this, and this, he modified this slightly and modified the cable, nothing of all this negative stuff that he has to say would exist at all. It would still be fantastic, gorgeous. So just know that what he's talking about is mostly the problems that he doesn't recognize behind the stuff, standard cable, the head amp, and the source that he hasn't revealed.
But it absolutely digs down as low as you would ever want to go. And if you are a bass head or a bass fan and you want to hear the deepest of the deepest bass, the Empyreans will certainly do that. Moving on to mid-range and treble. Specifically mid-range, when we're talking about vocals, not a word from me. I'm going to make this simple and say I think it might be perfect. They called their shot and they said, mid-range vocals, we're going to hit the bullseye, and I think they did. I think it is just the most beautiful sounding texture, and I feel like there is the perfect marriage of creamy, delicious, you know what I'm talking about, with we're going to give you some detail. So you're going to get some fireworks.
True, but the abyss goes
it's just
that is true.
Mind-blowing experience when it comes to vocals with the Empyreans. It is, without a doubt, my favorite thing about the headphones. No question. Top and extension and treble, okay.
Those actually get a lot better when you start getting deep into cables, and not just cables, good cables that not a lot of people can actually find. But I get what he says. But again, when you have the coupling effect of using a shorter cable, you control the clock, stuff like this. All of those things, they get a lot better, a lot more depth, and more natural. I
think that what's interesting about the Empyreans is they're going to say, you want to listen to some audiophile recordings? You want to do that, Ron? And I say, yeah, let's do that, Mr. Empyreans. And we listen to some audiophile recordings, and I am getting all the detail that I could ever want. I don't feel, as I'm listening to any of that stuff that is high res and beautiful recordings and very detailed and analytical audiophile recordings, I don't feel at all that I am missing out on anything. What's interesting is that when it comes down to, hey Ron, do you want to spin some records of The Who? Do you want to listen to some punk music? And I say, are you sure? And the Empyreans say, yeah, let's do it. Let's check this out. And I do, and I spend time listening to that. This is where things get a little bit strange, and that is, there's forgiveness. So, what this tells me is, somehow or another, Meze has casted a spell on these headphones that would say, give them all the detail that they think they want, make sure that they're not missing out on anything, but when it comes to stuff that they don't want, let's forgive the nasty stuff. And
Yeah, that's kind of what
they have done an amazing job with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, I mean, these are like my remarks for those negative areas that he addressed. And yeah, that was just basically my point with this video, that you buy a product, and usually when it's pristine premium product like this, you can manipulate the sound for it to sound good without any drawbacks. And that's just the point of this video that I wanted to make. So yeah, that basically covers it, and I hope you guys can use it for yeah, your potential headphone, the one that you have now, or the one that you may get in the future. Have a nice day. Bye.